Welcome to the CIO Evolution. In this podcast, we'll explore the Chief Information Officer's role in executing a new ongoing leadership imperative, digital transformation that promotes agility and resilience. How do CIOs upgrade legacy networks? What are the financial challenges CIOs face? And what are the security measures that are required in the new work from anywhere, mobile and cloud-based world?
Hi, this is Chris Jablonski, Director of CXO Revolutionaries and Community, welcoming you to another episode on the CIO Evolution. Today we have Brad Moldenhauer, Vice President and CISO-Americas at Zscaler, in his first appearance on the CIO Evolution. And it's great to be here in person at RSA Conference in San Francisco to do the recording. Hi, Brad.
Hey, Chris. Looking forward to this talk.
Me too. So even when not in the spotlight, it is certainly a sub-theme to everything cybersecurity and IT right now. AI, specifically generative AI. According to Bloomberg, in a newsletter I saw today, AI was mentioned more than 200 times on an earnings call this week by Meta, Alphabet, and Microsoft. So we've heard many viewpoints and advice from the CXO community, and I thought we would get specific some of the pros and cons of this new world that we're entering, where we have increased machine intelligence and automation across cybersecurity functions. But what better place to start than some juicy details around a debate that gets to the core of business and AI ethics. Also from Bloomberg, we have a report that many at Google were uncomfortable with the company's rush to get Bard, its chatbot, out to the public last month to keep up with Microsoft and OpenAI. Others disagree, saying that, hey, with its flaws, similar to the other bots, and because it's in beta, it's important to get it to the public as soon as possible to help improve upon it. So based on this story and your intuition, would you say that Google jumped the gun with a half-baked service, or is this the new normal for the AI arms race?
Yeah, I read this article, and look, candidly, the only thing that I said to myself when I was done reading it, garbage in, garbage out, right? I mean, this is something that I think we've seen for quite some time, which is interesting because you're right. Generative AI is just come to the forefront, and when I saw that there, I mean, it was obvious, I think, what had happened. The explosion in just its capabilities, its risks. I mean, Google was taking a look at that, I believe, and said, hey, this could potentially challenge this, century-long dominance that we've had in the web search space. We need to get our own model out there and people talking about it. And if you read that article, what I find just amazing is that, I mean, some of their own people were essentially calling their AI agent, a liar. And it got me thinking about it. It's like, well, I think the question really becomes, is it, the AI model that's a liar, or is it the people who created it, who may not have done the proper due diligence and released a product that doesn't have the integrity that it should? Now, I don't doubt that those people were likely received pressure from, I'm not saying the highest levels there, but certainly levels above them. And look, if that's the case, I think we know who the liar is. And if so, maybe that was fueled by, again, something I've seen over and over in my career, which, was initiatives fueled by minimal product viability. And I've always said, when it comes to, there are benefits with doing that, but from a security perspective, minimal product viability is going to get you maximum security exposure.
Right, but would you say with AI, because of where it's at, it has a little bit more leeway in terms of where you really draw that line between the MVP and what is acceptable as the state of the art available?
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's a question of what it's being used for, right? We've seen a number, well, not all. We've seen a number of use cases being used with generative AI now. Now, if that comes out and, I don't know, you have, people that are using it to, craft business forward or, business looking statements that may be inaccurate because of that lack of integrity or functionality. And if it's not functional, what does that say about its security? I mean, I don't know. A couple of examples that kind of came out of that. Let's assume somebody used that. Imagine I'm an investor relations exec or a corporate controller at a public company, and prior to like an earnings announcement during that quiet period, if you will, I decide to use ChatGPT to help craft the message. I may have just sparked a potential SEC or shareholder issue because the integrity of we just don't know some of the flaws. If it's actually parsing out misinformation, or I would question the security of it. Or here's another thing, because this will resonate with us working in the field that we do. I'm crafting an advertising strategy or a business campaign for a new product launch that hasn't gone GA, and I use this generative AI release for the messaging, and maybe I just disclosed a new innovation that was going to have market momentum and a splash because I have no idea what kind of security was built into it when it seems like it was rushed out. So those are some of the risks I think that we need to look at with MVP, as opposed to just getting it out there and not really worrying about it and then letting people use it and then letting it tune over time, right?
Absolutely. It sounds like organizations should really step in to help employees know what the reality is in terms of trust, in terms of it's like buyer beware, right? You got to really be careful in terms of who you are at the company using it, what you're using it for, and what you're feeding it, because all those have an implication on cybersecurity, accuracy, and you got to really be knowledgeable about what you're going to eventually use it for, right?
Yeah. Well, and here's an interesting thought too. Because the way I phrase that, there's risks that, hey, I'm using this generative AI solution by this company, and I, start asking it, those scenarios that I mentioned there. You could ask, hey, what is the difference between, using similar input in a general, search engine, such as Google or Bing? If I'm performing, a good example of that was, if I'm performing like patent searches, via Google, because I'm thinking of filing a patent, maybe I've just disclosed that idea to Google. Have we ever thought about that? So now it's interesting. If somebody asked me that, one of our customers, I'd be like, well, okay, we, as an inline proxy, we're masking, our customers' IP and namespace. So when they go to a website and they're trying to scrub, hey, what organization is this, or who is this? All they're seeing is Zscaler namespace. So maybe they'll think it was us. Yeah.
Right. Definitely some implications for data privacy at large. So if we now start to walk down the path of cybersecurity, we have seen several examples and countless articles about malware, phishing, and other threats being assisted with these tools, right? It was bound to happen, and we're seeing it come to life. Zscaler released a phishing report stating that threat actors had used phishing kits and chatbot AI tools like ChatGPT in their efforts. As a CISO, what are some of the strategies now that there's sophisticated deepfakes, new forms of social engineering, and spear phishing taking place as a result, and only get worse with this new sophisticated tool?
Yeah, I think it was almost an inevitability, weaponizing, generative AI. And I was reading a great report earlier here at our RSA where, AI was being used for sophisticated mobile scans. And then the follow-up to that was an impersonation attack where, somebody was convinced that they were either, texting or even talking, to someone, based on some of those models that were being used for, malicious purposes, right? And I mean, we've seen in the past where AI models have been tampered with, for malicious outcomes to deliver and execute arbitrary and malicious code. And I think one of the challenges for security practitioners in general is that these AI models aren't protected with typical security capabilities and controls that are in routine use, like endpoint detection and response, identity and access management controls. They're not really germane here. So it's interesting because here at Zscaler, one of the things I always ask internally is because, we've had AI and ML for quite some time. Like, what do we actually do to put, these guardrails in, to prevent misuse? And I think there's two aspects to that. If I'm responsible for the development of an AI model, how do I make sure that model's adequately protected for its purpose? Like typical security risk, we need some kind of proactive threat discovery, but for pre-trained models, you need to assess it for the tampering, hijacking, and abuse, and you need to securely evaluate the model's behavior in real time and make sure that it aligns with whatever predefined ranges you have. But other than that, it's a lot of the basic practices you would see in, I think, typical product and application, development, cryptographic hashing, digitally signing code for product integrity validation, and really to help make it as tamper resistant as possible. I think like any asset under a CISO's purview, independent assessments, pen testing to really reduce the potential for misuse, right? And then the other aspect of it is, like you said, at the beginning of this, there's a really good model out there, and I've got malicious intentions, and I want to use that model to create deep fakes of a competitor to cause reputational harm. That is very difficult to police, right? So other than if you're the person putting out the model, how are you governing the users of that model in a way that they're not using it to cause harm to others? That's a very difficult question. Yeah.
It sounds like AI could just be diffused through so many threat vectors that you can't treat it as one in its own, right? Mm-hmm. But how would you say that in terms of the real and imminent risks that it poses, how would you compare it to some of the more traditional cybersecurity threats we see today?
Well, one of the things that we always talk about with AI and ML is really kind of automating a specific outcome. The most cyber defenders have really found incredible benefit and reduction of risk through the automation of advanced threat protection. Right? I don't know the last time I talked to a peer of mine or a customer of ours who wasn't using some type of AI or ML driven endpoint protection platform. We don't see signature based AV solutions out there anymore. So from that aspect, I think that there's always been some value in the way that it automates. So now if we look at that, reverse, how are these guys leveraging that to automate, their malware dissemination? And I think something that's been around for a while, at least in theory, is, we've got all these cybersecurity solutions out there that are using AI and ML to, provide high fidelity alerts, prevention. Well, what if a malicious actor was able to poison that, to then get it to start allowing the bad stuff, and and then all of a sudden it gets tuned to that, and then who knows how rampant that can become or pervasive. So, a lot of concerns with that too. Yeah,
absolutely. I think my heart's already racing. So many different ways this could go sideways. But now that we've covered the outside-in threat, and at the beginning we talked a little bit about the inside-out, like there's more opportunity for unintentional insider threat activities, right?
Oh, yeah.
But let's pivot now to some of the pluses for generative AI and cybersecurity. We've seen a lot of vendors here at RSA at least giving an indication of the new powers that will be available to SOC teams and to CISOs who are looking for more efficiencies, more optimization, things that take pretty much a machine now to handle, whether it's processing giant data sets, uncovering threats, etc. But tools like ChatGPT can improve efficiency, and I think we've seen some examples of that, and can be tuned to effectively manage cyber risk. Can you walk us through some of the process improvements that you could see? I mean, is it simply like putting a report together with the help of ChatGPT and sending it to the board?
Yeah. I think there's a number of beneficial use cases. And look, you and I have talked about this. We've played around with it in a number of scenarios, and I think that's good. We need that sense of curiosity. I mean, that's what I've been doing a lot with it. Is now I'm even kind of looking at it, and as I'm thinking of ways that it could cause. And I hate doing this because I know that there's benefits to it, and I know you asked me about that specifically, but I start looking at it from, oh wow, this is great, but oh wow, I start spinning it around. I'm like, this could potentially cause material harm if this or that happens. So one of the things I'm talking about with customers now is, hey, how can we use this for some of those benefits? And I think really, I see all kinds of approaches here, but the one that I really like the most is, okay, look, a new story is popping up every day about some kind of exposure or material harm. Right now we need to find out more about this. And if I was in a role where I still had those kind of operational responsibilities, the security team would have full access to ChatGPT, while we limited its access on a case-by-case basis, reviewing what some of these use cases are. Because look, in organizations, technology and security is not the only place where innovative and creative people work, right? So, I've been talking to customers and helping them guide, what's that look like, at least from a technical enforcement, which is quite simple, but what exactly are we looking at? Well, exactly what we're talking about now is understanding what kind of governance we probably need to put in place, like a generative AI policy. And the challenge with that is, I've talked to some customers, they're like, oh yeah, not a problem. And we've already drafted it. Here it is. It's like 20 pages. And the problem is, no one is going to read that other than the security team. Too detailed, verbose, 20 pages of a policy? That's not a policy. That's a short story narrative. So I think that what we need to do to really harness the benefits of it is we need to get our user base, our developer base, trained on a core set of principles, right? What are the 3 or 4 things that really make up the moral compass that these personas should be following, right? Here one of the things I was interested in looking at is we have a code of conduct for our data scientists, right? And we have them understand those principles because again, they're the creative people, and we don't want to stifle innovation, but you do want to create, I think, in essence, that moral compass, so they realize, hey, I'm on a slippery slope. I'm going to stop and ask for guidance. That's the best way, I think, to mitigate material impact and material exposure. Let creativity and innovation flow. Train people on the principles so they know those 3 to 4 things that will heighten vigilance, making them take pause and seek guidance from the experts in security, privacy, legal, and so on. I think if organizations do that, they'll mitigate a lot of risk before it really starts cascading into something significant.
Right. Yeah. So companies should be, at this point in their next round of user awareness training, putting in a section in there about generative AI.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, one of the things that I'm doing now, some of them are even fast tracking that a little bit, and I love when I hear this, it's, hey, the security team, we need to be the first users of this to really kind of find out, all the potential use cases of it and work with these stakeholders in all of our lines of business, whether, depending upon what it is that your organization does. But what I feel like they're doing there, or ultimately could be doing, is shaping the path of the risk for their business, their customers, and maybe even society.
Do you get a sense that because of what's happening with this technology and its explosion, that we're going to see more necessary cooperation between the CISO and, say, the CIO, who's also trying to figure out what is the business implication here, because on IT, and the CTO as well, right? Because this is kind of like a fog moving through every aspect of the organization. Yeah.
Well, I can see, I hate to say it, but I can see some typical technology and security governance issues there. I haven't seen this yet, but will it, create a role? The chief AI officer, right? And I think that's kind of an interesting question, because do we even have a chief application officer, right? I mean, I know we have a CIO, a CTO, a CDO, a CPO, a CRO, a CSO. If anything, we have too many of these individuals and too many people who have accountability for it, rather than saying, hey, I own it, and now the focus shifts to, how do we evolve ourselves, our knowledge, our learning, our governance, our technologies to best manage it, right?
Well, say I'm a CIO, let's just seize on this decision point. For example, you could put more or less AI in productivity suites, right? What is the right balance in your view?
So that, I'm just going to say right now, I would welcome that. So like AI and productivity suites, and let's just use like the Microsoft Office suite, and think about using AI in the creation of, I don't know, like pivot tables, right? Or just advanced features like that. Is there danger with that? Like, could we have too much AI in our productivity? So, and obviously we both see it going way beyond just business tools like that. But, again, I would welcome that in typical enterprise business apps, because even in the Office Productivity Suite, I at times struggle to find where to implement a feature that I've drawn up in my mind. I think having a mature version of, Clippy pumped with a generative AI steroid would be quite useful, right? It would also save me the time that I typically spend, searching YouTube for a video on how to add gradient color to a customized elbow connector in a presentation or something, right? So it would be much better to embed a generative AI feature that, could templatize those tasks and bury the complexity, not only for me, but just, for our users in general. But now, again, I come at this from, the angle that I do, now we've come full circle. And the question is, again, what integrity assurances do I have that this AI model isn't doing something unbeknownst to me? Do I know this model isn't susceptible to embedding malicious code in my presentation file, ostensibly weaponizing it, and I send it to you, and now I've become a distributor of malicious code because of a model flaw that allowed it to be manipulated or poisoned? These are the scenarios we need to be thinking about, because we've already seen AI and ML models used for malware dissemination. So if we enable or add on a flawed ML model into our corporate office app, for example, that would be instantaneous mobilization of a monumental malware delivery system that's masked by our identities and the trust that we have with our peers, customers, stakeholders, and each other as we exchange files. That could be disastrous for society.
Right. That's a high cost for getting an outcome that's machine driven versus the alternative, which may have taken you a little bit more time, but it's like an A/B test.
Yeah.
You could do the human intelligence driven activity. It might take a little bit more time, but there it's the pure ingenuity of the person. And then you got to compare it to what could have been if you just decided to press the ChatGPT button.
Yeah.
And then you got to make a decision about which one you're actually going to use.
And I mean, You're my content editor. I mean, we develop a lot of content, adding automation into that and kind of polling everything that's out there to, not only help with the content, but also, the aesthetics of it. I would love that. I would love more automation in that area. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's definitely a big impact on the world of graphic design, right?
Yeah.
Website creation, etc.
Yeah.
But as we come to a close, we're basically facing the inevitable question about AI risks to society. Should we heed this warning, or is it overblown?
As I'm having more and more discussions, it's the one thing that I don't think that we're talking about is, what is our future dependence on these AI systems look like, and what could we gain and what could we lose? For example, from a loss perspective, reading a map or using a compass, can anyone even do that anymore because of GPS? What if we lost all GPS around the world? Yeah, so I think that's something to think about. And I don't want to go to the extreme on this, but we've already been living in this digital messaging, where text, Slack messages, etc., and we've really minimized our interpersonal interactions tremendously by and large. As humans, we have more data at the ready, and maybe we get stuck in this paradigm where we harness that to affirm our points of view rather than inform them. And ultimately, that polarity that's been growing for quite some time is, we get more and more dependent on technology. It gets exacerbated by generative AI, and we shut down, our basic sensibilities to critically think, problem solve. I really think we need to guard against that individually and collectively, in order to have, the society we want, and having the technology like generative AI, connecting and enriching lives, to really create social and economic benefits. So, I don't want to come across as someone who's vehemently against this. I'm very much for it. I just think that we need to properly assess all the risks associated with it, and then really maximize all the tremendous benefits it can provide us.
Well, thank you, Brad, for joining us on the CIO Evolution. Brad's a frequent guest on the CISO's Gambit, one of our 3 podcasts on CXO Revolutionaries. Please subscribe to them all for perspectives on business, infotech, and cybersecurity. Brad, thanks again.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
Thanks for listening to the CIO Evolution. Check back with your podcast provider regularly for more episodes. You can find more episodes along with other podcasts on the CXO Revolutionaries website at revolutionaries.zscaler.com. Statements by Zscaler podcasters and guests are informational only and should never be construed as legal advice. You should consult your legal advisor on matters related to you or your business. Zscaler makes no warranties, express, implied, or statutory as to the content of this podcast, and it is provided as is. Content on this podcast may contain forward-looking statements that are current as of the date of the recording and subject to change. These statements are subject to the safe harbor provisions created by the Private Securities Litigation Reform Act of 1995. Full legal disclaimers are available at revolutionaries.zscaler.com. Copyright 2021.